Hey guys, so in this video I'm going to take a pixel art image and I'm going to turn it into vector so that we can scale it up as big as we need. So first what we're going to do is go over here to Photoshop, and I have this file that has all these sprite images of Link from Super Nintendo, Legend of Zelda, A Link to the Past. One of my favorite games. So anyway, I'm going to make a selection around this one, which is when Link first gets the shield and the sword. So we'll just copy that back into Illustrator and paste, and whoa, holy cow, it's so small. I'm going to zoom in and zoom in and zoom in. So here we see little Link with his sword and shield. Now there are a couple of ways you can do this. I'm going to show you a couple of ways that don't work according to my opinion. So I'm going to come down to Image Trace in the Window menu. I'm going to turn on Preview. Let's change some settings here. Let's go to Color. It just doesn't look right. Let's go to the High, and you flip open this Advanced tab here. So that gets pretty close to, no it doesn't, it's terrible. So we'll bring corners all the way up and the noise all the way down, and that's the best it can do. So we're gonna need to change some things. Yeah, alright. So let's just delete that whole thing. Paste in our image again, and you may want to, it's always good to make a copy, and for that I just click on the image, drag while holding down Alt, and you can see that it adds to the duplicate thing. So there we go. I'm going to zoom out quite a bit. Let's put our original image up there, and then we'll take this one, and we're going to hold down Shift and scale it up by dragging at the corner. And now you can see that because this is Illustrator, it's not going to recalculate the image. If I was to do this in Photoshop, say put it on a letter-sized page, paste it in, and scale it up, it would try and interpret those lines, which, you know, it's a cute little image, but it looks, as you would expect, a pixelated, blurry, teeny tiny image to look after it's blown up. So not going to do it that way. That's a terrible idea. So back to Illustrator. We've got all of the lines and everything where they need to be, and because I held down Shift while I scaled it, it should remain to the scale that it needs to be. So we're going to try again with that image trace. Let's make sure that everything is set. Let's make sure that we're using Preview. Just bump back to there. Let's just play around with the settings again to see if it will help at all while it is this lower, or this higher size image. And unfortunately, no, it's not changing anything helpful. But I'm not giving up. So let's turn the preview off. Come on, preview off. Maybe I need to back it up so there's no tracing effect on it. Okay, so now we have the larger image. Let's go into, we'll first make a copy of that. Make sure we copy, that's Command C or Control C. We go back into Photoshop with a new document, and this should take the physical size of that object. And basically I'm just running it through Photoshop so that I can create the pixels, so it'll do a raster image at this bigger size. So Control A or Command A, Control C, Command C again on your keyboard. Go back to Illustrator, and we'll try with, let's delete both of those so I don't get confused. Paste again. Now I should have all of the pixels from Photoshop. So now when I try, it's going to go based on the larger file information, if that makes sense. So remember, this one is just an enlarged version of this small, super small file. This one is a copy. It's the information from the file size in Photoshop, which is 414 pixels by 559 pixels, whereas this sprite that I copied here is only 20 by 27. So you can see that Illustrator, for the image trace on the smaller version right here, only has 20 by 27 pixels of information. This one has 400 by 700, roughly, pixels of information to make the live trace from. So this is one way back and forth between Illustrator and Photoshop to try and get it to what we want it to do. So again, oops, no, we don't want that. That's on the little one. Let's do the big one. The live trace, let's take the paths all the way up to 100%, corners all the way up, and down to 1 pixel of noise. And I want to show you some things that should cause some concern. Well, now it's not doing it, of course, because I'm pointing it out. When I did it before, I had some issues with my pixels having corners, weird corners, in here. So to me, you know what that tells me? That tells me that we can actually use this as the trace. So I take it back saying, oh, we're not going to show you the easy way first. So I'll hit expand, and look at that. You've got all these little pixels. Okay, tutorial done. Ha ha. No. Let's isolate that group, and we can get our magic wand, which is the Y key, and pull. Let's get our magic wand settings. Let's go to the tolerance of like 1 and use the fill color rather than the stroke color. And now when we click, we should only get this teal color in the background, and we can delete that out of the way. Now we should be good for having a good image. So that is one option, first option, and I said it wouldn't work, and then it worked for me. So thanks Illustrator. So let's move him to the side. And then I will show you what to do for the rest of the options. So let's say you aren't able to make a larger version of the image in Photoshop. So what you want to do is, again, not trust the image trace, because it's going to look like that, and we want it to look like that. So let's undo that. Turn off our image trace, close our magic wand. We don't need that anymore. We want it to look more like this. So what we need to do is get, there's two ways to do this. You can either get that pixel size right here and make a new layer so that you can build on top of the old layer. I'm going to go back to my default colors and turn the stroke off. Basically, it's an easy way to get a white box. Get as close to that right there as you can. thanks processor for not making my colors show up. Let's zoom in as far as we can. I think that's it. And it looks like it's a little tall, a little taller than what I have. I think that's it right there. Okay. Now, this is one way you can do it, and I'll show you another way to build the grid that you can fill in. And you can do this. This is kind of like when you used to, you know, as a kid, when you would create a bunch of boxes so you could copy a picture and enlarge it or reduce it, and you're doing the little, basically each box is a different drawing and it matches the original grid. I don't have an example to show you, but anyway, so I move the box, making a copy by holding down what's it called, Alt or Option on your keyboard, and then we're going to copy that. We're going to Object Transform again, which I'm calling Duplicate. So it's Command D, Control D on your keyboard, and that gets me over to this side. And so let's go back. Oops, we want to go this way with this one until it snaps next to that one, and just keep hitting Command D to duplicate that, and then we're going to go with this whole row and copy it up so it snaps in line with that, and do that a bunch of times. And you can see it's not quite working. Because it looks like my pixel size is a little off. So I'm going to grab the whole bunch and we're going to move them up so that they're in line. You can go Command Y or Control Y to get so that everything will intersect with the border of the image below. Oh, that's why I've got some overlap. Ah, stinky. So this is one of the things that I don't like about this method of doing it. We're going to come down here, drag them all to the bottom so that they match up perfectly. Where it says intersect, it should be intersected. Okay, so copy that so it's at the intersection, duplicate a bunch of times, and that should match up with our top. And it's a little high. Well, that's no good. All right, back to design mode rather than outline. We're going to fill these with, we use the default colors and then switch to the fill and go to no fill. So we can see the boxes in front of the corresponding pixels. So I want to show you another way you can build this grid. So this is fine. But there's even there's possibly a faster way. So let me turn off that layer, make a new layer. We're going to go under the line segment tool, pull it out until you get to the rectangular grid tool, and make sure you're on view, smart guides, and snap to point. And you should see that it says when you're over that anchor there on the corner, and that's when you want to start holding down your mouse button. Now mine is already pretty close to where I need it for this project. Yours may look something more like this, and so what you're going to need to do is when you get down here to this anchor, don't move your hand. that your mouse is on, or if you're using a stylus, try and hold it as still as possible. And up will increase the rows of your grid until you have them so that they look about as tall as the pixels are. And I'll zoom that in so you can see what I'm talking about, because I can't do that with only two hands here. Up will increase the rows, down will decrease the rows until you get it so that it snaps pretty close to where those pixel size should be. And now I need to increase right using the right arrow, and that will increase the number of columns, and so I can get them to where they line up with the width of each of those pixels in the original artwork. Left will decrease the number of rows, right will increase. So now we have our grid. And what you want to do with that grid is right click it and do ungroup, or Control Shift G, Command Shift G on your Mac. And now you have a bunch of lines. I can show you that. See, we have a line vertically and a line horizontally. What I want to do is select, make sure I have those all selected, and hit the divide, and then right click that and ungroup that. So now I should have a box everywhere that I have a pixel, and you can click on each of those corners of the boxes. So that is how you get your grid. And again, you would only do this if your live trace version didn't work. And like I said, the first time I tried it, it didn't work. I had weird fragments of boxes and things overlapping. Hey, look at that. Look at that. I've got some weird things. So I would actually want to rebuild this anyway, even though it worked out. You're not going to see that unless you really zoom in there. But I want perfection. Also, let me, this has individual large weird funky shapes like this, and I'm not going to have that with this. My pixel art here is going to be, each individual pixel is going to be its own color. So now what we need to do, either using the grid, and I'll call this grid, and I'll call this one pixels, because this is the one that I created, and that's the one I used the grid for. So I'm going to turn the pixels version on, and now what you need to do is go ahead and just select all of the pixels that you're not going to use. And probably better than using the selection tool is going to be the direct selection tool. Zoom in if you have to, so that way you're not moving things around from such a far out distance of magnification. So I'm just going to go through all this, and I'll show you what happens once we get these exterior ones selected. Alright, now I have them all selected, and I can just delete them. So if I'm looking at it, just that layer, it's going to be just these black or these white boxes with the black outlines. So now what we need to do is turn each of those into the color that is shown in the pixel art below it. And so the easiest way to do that is either going to be with the lasso tool, and as you see, I just made a mistake there. So you only want to grab the ones that have the colors that you're going for, and you can see, zoom in a little bit, you can see some color difference here between this and these. So I'm going to grab all of these darker ones at the same time, and you don't even have to fill or circle the whole thing, just pieces of it, because we're going to change the color. Can I do it with just one? If you hold down Control while you have your lasso tool And make sure that you hold down Shift when you're selecting multiple areas, because if you don't have Shift selected, then you'll not add to your selection, and that's what we need to do. We need to add these shapes to the selection. So I want that one, and Command will change to the direct selection tool. Can't tell if that, yeah, those are different. So anyway, just go through it. Grab all the colors that are the same. And here you can see the difference between the line of his face and the line on the shield. So we don't want the shield, we just want his face. This is a good time to be practiced in the finger dance, because switching back and forth to our selection tools and using our lasso selection tool is going to really save you some time. Okay, there, I've got all the darker ones. So a couple of things I could do. I can zoom in, grab my eyedropper tool, and select this color that's in the background, or I could grab it over here because I have it created over here in that live trace version. But I'd rather just go with the back because it's easier, it's right there. So we can turn that off and we can see those are the ones we've colored. So that's good start. All right, now deselect everything. Let's do his sword up here. And back to the lasso tool to get this big area, and that should get all of them. And it looks like I actually got this blue in here instead, but that shouldn't affect too bad. We'll just change that one back once we get there. So lasso tool, only crossing the lines of the objects or the shapes we're looking at. Okay, we got that one. And I will go ahead now and speed up the video because you don't really need to have me talking through all of this. I can go through it a lot quicker. I'm not sure that his face is the same color as his hand. So, you know how sometimes your flesh changes color, whether there's highlights or whatever on it. His hand, his ear, I think are different colors than his face. And if you hit one of those things like I just did where it went to the wrong color, just redo it. It's okay. That's what the undo button is for. Can't get it to select the right color. There we go. And anything that still has a with the black outline on it is something we haven't got to yet. So be careful and make sure that you're not moving things, because you don't want to move things, you just want to select them. And there's an appropriate time to hit down that shift button to add to your selection, and then there's a good time to leave it alone so that you don't accidentally add the wrong thing. I think I've got all of his head done now. Looks like I missed a spot there. Yep, okay. Now his head's done. Move on to the tunic here. And you use whichever selection tool or direct selection tool or lasso tool that you would prefer using. I am switching back and forth here just because in some cases it's easier to use the direct selection tool because it's right off the eyedropper when I hit that command key on my keyboard. And if you click on a square and you're like not sure if it's been changed or not, just check over here at the at your fill color, and that'll tell you. Like that one wasn't. Okay, let's do these brown ones, and they are here and here. see what else we need. Looks like his shoe and his shield. Oops. Now I did an extra one I didn't want. So I can either select it and change it back, or just try that selection all over again. Okay, the shield. And this, of course, is the first shield that Link gets in the Super Nintendo game when he goes into the dungeon and finds his uncle down there as he's on his way to rescue Zelda. If you haven't got to that point in the game, then you haven't played the game. It's like the first thing you do. So, I can say that comfortably without, sounding too snobberish or whatever. And I think I'm done. All this needs is a Triforce, so Link can make himself a wish. And there it is. So it looks like well, you can barely see the difference of the sword here because it's a really light color, as is the shield. So anyway, comparing the two, they look pretty similar. The live traced version and the the build it myself version, they're both scalable. Oops, now I did it. Let's get that out of the way. Do you see what I did? I just yeah, let me lock that bottom layer and make that a group so I don't accidentally pull part of his hat off again. So anyway, they look pretty close to the same. There are some subtle differences. There are some corners. I can't tell if that's a bad corner. It's not. It looks like it from out here. I know that one's a bad corner because I've already shown that. But you may get lucky with the image trace. It may give you the right color and the right image. That's another thing. Let's compare it to the original. It looks like these colors are more accurate in the one that I did because I pulled them straight from the image, and this one looks lighter in some areas on the image trace because of its interpretation. So just be careful. If you're going to use image trace, go ahead and do it, but just be careful. You may not like the results. It may look a little different. It may give you some weird artifacts. But anyway, so that's my my tutorial on building a vector version of a PixelArt. So go out there, refresh your old 8-bit games or 16-bit games, and make yourself some little characters to use. In another video, I think I will show how to make your own pixel art based on a real image. Maybe I'll do that one coming up. All right, we'll see you later. Thanks.